There are moments in life when you don't come to God quietly. You come because you need Him desperately. You came because you needed direction, because something hurt, because something was uncertain, because you were running out of strength. You asked clearly. You spoke honestly. You waited expectantly. And then, nothing. No clarity. No sudden reassurance. No shift in circumstances. No unmistakable sense of guidance. Just quiet. And in a crisis, quiet can feel louder than noise. Silence in ordinary seasons is one thing. Silence when you're desperate is something else entirely. It stretches, it echoes, it presses against you. You may not say it out loud, but the question forms somewhere deep inside. God, where are you? You still believe, you still pray, you still want to trust, but the absence of response feels heavy. Silence begins to feel personal, not because you've rejected God, but because you reached for Him and felt no clear reply. In those moments, silence can feel like distance, like standing in a room and speaking, only to hear your own voice return to you. It can even begin to feel like abandonment, not dramatic abandonment, not a full loss of faith, but a subtle ache, a wondering whether something has shifted in the relationship. Did I miss something? Did I do something wrong? Is this a test? Is God disappointed? Has He stepped back? Silence leaves space for interpretation, and when you are already vulnerable, the interpretations can grow quickly. The mind fills in what the heart cannot hear, and yet, even in this tension, something in you keeps reaching, keeps praying, keeps hoping that the quiet will eventually break. This is one of the most difficult parts of faith, not believing when everything is clear, but remaining when heaven feels quiet. Before we try to solve that feeling, before we rush to explanations or reassurance, we have to sit honestly in it. Because the ache of heaven's quiet is real. But what if silence doesn't mean absence? You see, when heaven feels quiet, the mind rarely stays neutral. It begins to search for reasons. Did I do something wrong? Is God disappointed with me? Is this punishment? Did I miss something He was trying to tell me? Silence leaves room for interpretation. And when you're already vulnerable, that room can fill quickly with fear. We are wired to interpret silence relationally. When someone we care about stops responding, we assume something shifted. So when God feels silent, the same instinct activates. Maybe I failed. Maybe I drifted. Maybe this distance is deserved. But silence is not the same thing as rejection. God's character does not shift when the volume lowers. He does not become colder because He becomes quieter. He does not withdraw affection because answers are delayed. God is not transactional. He does not respond based on spiritual performance. He does not measure how quickly you receive reassurance, and He does not punish questions with distance. We often assume that response speed equals relational closeness, that if God loves us deeply, He will answer immediately. But love is not measured by reaction time. A delayed response does not mean diminished care. In fact, many of the most formative seasons of faith are marked not by immediate clarity, but by sustained presence without explanation. Silence can trigger panic because it feels like something has changed. But the quiet does not mean God has shifted His posture toward you. He is not offended by your urgency. He is not irritated by your repeated prayers. He is not disappointed that you still need reassurance. If anything, your reaching reveals the depth of the relationship, not its weakness. So before we interpret silence as anger, before we label it abandonment, before we turn it into proof that something is wrong, it may be worth asking a different question. Not, what did I do? But what if something else is happening here? And that leads us into a deeper reframing of what silence might actually mean. So what if the silence you're experiencing is not distance, but depth? We often interpret quiet as withdrawal. If God were near, we assume we would feel it clearly. If He were attentive, we believe we would hear something unmistakable. But presence does not always announce itself. In human relationships, there are moments when constant reassurance is necessary. When words are frequent, guidance is explicit, support is immediate. But as relationships mature, something shifts. Trust grows quieter, Parents do not disappear when a child begins to walk independently. They step back slightly, not to abandon, but to strengthen. They remain near, watchful, steady, even when they are not constantly intervening. The silence is not absence. It is space for growth. In the same way, God's silence does not mean He has moved away. It may mean He is allowing something deeper to form within you. Trust that does not rely on constant confirmation. Faith that does not collapse without immediate answers. Closeness that is not dependent on constant sensation. Silence can be an environment where relational maturity develops. When every prayer is answered instantly, dependence stays shallow. But when response is delayed, roots deepen, motives clarify, trust stretches beyond emotion, and stretching does not feel comfortable. It can feel uncertain, even lonely. But loneliness and distance are not the same thing. Silence can coexist with presence. God often works invisibly. Just because you do not perceive movement does not mean nothing is happening. Some of the most significant growth in nature happens underground, unseen, uncelebrated, unnoticed. Roots grow in darkness. Foundations are laid beneath the surface. Strength forms where visibility is absent. God's quiet may not be about withholding. It may be about building endurance, building discernment, building a kind of faith that remains steady even when reassurance is delayed. This does not make the silence painless, but it changes what it means. Instead of interpreting quiet as rejection, you can begin to consider it as depth forming beneath awareness. And this reframing is not something we invented to cope. It's something we see again and again in Scripture, in the lives of those who walked closely with God and still experienced long stretches of silence. To understand that more clearly, we need to look at those stories. If silence meant abandonment, Scripture would read very differently. Instead, it tells the story of people who loved God deeply and still waited in quiet. Consider Job. After losing his children, his health, and everything familiar, Job does not hide his anguish. He cries out, he questions, he demands to understand, he longs for God to respond. And for a long time, there is no answer, no explanation, no immediate comfort, no divine interruption. Heaven is quiet, but that quiet is not absence. God was not indifferent to Job's suffering. He was not unaware. He was not distant. The silence stretched, but it did not sever the relationship. When God finally speaks, it is not rushed, not reactive, and not defensive. It comes at the appointed time, revealing that delay was never neglect. The delay was not denial. The silence was not rejection. Something deeper was unfolding beneath what Job could see. David knew this tension as well. In the Psalms, he repeatedly cries, "How long, O Lord? How long will you hide your face from me? Why do you stand far off?" These are not casual prayers. They are the prayers of someone who feels the ache of divine quiet. And yet David keeps speaking, keeps reaching, keeps turning toward God even when response feels delayed. His faith did not eliminate the experience of silence. It coexisted with it. Even Jesus entered this territory. In Gethsemane, facing betrayal and suffering, he prays with urgency, "If it is possible, let this cup pass from me." The prayer is sincere, the anguish is real, the need is immediate, and the path does not change. Heaven does not remove the suffering. The silence in that moment does not mean the Father is absent. It means the Father's purpose is unfolding in a way that transcends immediate relief. And beyond individuals, there is a historical silence woven into the story of redemption itself. Between the final prophet of the Old Testament and the arrival of Christ, there were roughly 400 years of prophetic quiet. No new revelation, no fresh voice from heaven. Generations lived and died in that waiting. And then, movement. The birth of Christ did not interrupt silence prematurely. It emerged from it. Again and again, Scripture reveals a pattern. Silence often precedes significant movement. Delay does not equal rejection. God's quiet does not mean God's withdrawal. Faith deepens in waiting. Trust strengthens in uncertainty. The ache of silence is not foreign to the life of faith. It is woven into it. But even when you see that pattern, even when Scripture reframes the meaning of quiet, something remains true. Knowing this does not instantly remove the ache. Moreover, when God feels silent, something very human begins to happen inside you. Stress changes perception. In moments of crisis, when something feels urgent, painful, uncertain, your entire system narrows its focus. Attention tightens. Awareness sharpens around threat. The body and mind prioritize survival over subtlety. This is not weakness. It is design. When something matters deeply, your system turns up the volume on danger signals and turns down the volume on everything else, which means something important. The louder the crisis, the harder it becomes to perceive quiet reassurance. When your heart is racing and your thoughts are scanning for answers, subtle comfort can go unnoticed. Gentle presence can feel invisible. The nervous system is listening for resolution, not stillness. So when you pray urgently, asking for clarity, relief, direction, your internal expectation rises. You are listening for something unmistakable, something strong, something that breaks the tension. And when that doesn't come, silence feels amplified. But often, what feels like silence is not the absence of God. It is the mismatch between the intensity of your expectation and the subtlety of His presence. Stress narrows perception. Emotional flooding reduces sensitivity to quiet signals. It's like standing in a loud room and trying to hear a whisper. The whisper may be real, but your system is not in a state to register it easily. There is another layer to this as well. As human beings, we equate silence with absence because that is often how it works in relationships. If someone we love stops responding, we assume distance. If someone goes quiet during conflict, we feel disconnection. So when heaven feels quiet, that same relational instinct activates. Silence triggers attachment fear. It touches something deep. The fear of being left alone, unsupported, unseen, even if your theology is strong. Even if you intellectually know God is faithful, your relational wiring can still react. This doesn't make you immature, it makes you human. And when attachment fear is activated, perception shifts again. The mind looks for evidence. It searches for signs of abandonment. It replays the quiet, trying to interpret it. Silence becomes loaded with meaning. But meaning assigned under stress is rarely balanced. Expectation also plays a powerful role. If you believe God should respond in a certain way or through clear words, unmistakable impressions, sudden emotional calm, your system may overlook quieter forms of presence. Expectation can unintentionally block subtle signals. If you're waiting for thunder, you may miss the whisper. If you're looking for dramatic change, you may overlook quiet, sustaining grace. None of this means God is withholding Himself. It means your internal state influences how you perceive what is happening. The crisis may be loud. Your need may be intense. Your desire for reassurance may be urgent. And in that environment, quiet faithfulness can feel like absence. But often, what is happening is not distance. It is subtlety. God's presence does not always match the volume of your fear. And recognizing this does not eliminate the ache of silence, but it softens the panic. It allows you to consider that what feels empty may not be empty at all. It may simply be quieter than you expected. And sometimes understanding this makes space for a new image, a different way of seeing what silence might actually be doing beneath the surface. Let's move there. There is a reason silence feels so disorienting. We are used to associating growth with visibility. When something is happening, we expect to see it. When something is progressing, we expect signs. But in nature, some of the most important growth happens underground. When a seed is planted, nothing appears to change at first. There is no visible movement, no immediate evidence of life. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening at all. But beneath the surface, something critical is forming. Roots begin to stretch downward. They search for stability. They anchor into soil that cannot be seen from above. Before anything rises toward the light, something must first grow in the dark. Silence can feel like burial, but sometimes it is planting. In seasons where God feels quiet, it may not mean nothing is happening. It may mean something foundational is forming beneath what you can perceive. Roots grow where no light is seen, and roots matter more than branches. Branches are visible. They attract attention. They sway in the wind. Roots remain hidden. They do not draw admiration. They do not announce their progress. But without roots, nothing above ground survives. Silence is often the soil where roots deepen. Trust grows before answers appear. Endurance strengthens before clarity arrives. Stability forms before movement becomes visible. When everything is quiet, you may assume growth has stopped. But growth that depends on constant reassurance remains shallow. Roots that grow in darkness learn to hold steady without constant feedback. They learn to draw strength from deeper sources. They learn to stand when storms come, not because the wind is gone, but because the foundation has strengthened. If God answered every prayer immediately, faith would remain surface level. If reassurance came instantly, dependence would never deepen. But when silence stretches, something shifts. Trust moves from being emotion-based to being anchored in relationship. Faith becomes less about feeling and more about remaining. Silence does not always mean inactivity. It often means underground work. You may not see it. You may not feel it. You may not recognize it until much later. But roots are forming. Stability is deepening. And when the season changes, when light breaks through, what has grown beneath will support what rises above. This doesn't make the dark easy, but it changes what it means. And to see how this plays out in real life, not just in metaphor, it helps to look at someone walking through a silent season of their own. There was a woman named Elena who entered a season she never expected. Nothing dramatic had happened at first. It began quietly, a difficult decision, a health concern in the family, uncertainty about the future. Not a single overwhelming crisis, but a steady accumulation of questions. She prayed the way she always had, carefully, faithfully, honestly. She asked for direction. She asked for clarity. She asked for reassurance that she was not walking alone. And she waited. Days passed, then weeks. There was no dramatic sign, no unmistakable answer, no sudden peace that silenced every doubt. The silence unsettled her more than the situation itself. At first, she searched for what she might have missed. Maybe she wasn't listening correctly. Maybe she needed to pray differently. Maybe she had overlooked a sign. So she leaned in harder. Longer prayers, more scripture, more attentiveness. Still, quiet. What troubled her most was not the lack of answers, but the feeling that heaven had grown distant at the exact moment she needed closeness the most. Yet something inside her refused to stop reaching. Even without clear response, she continued to speak to God. Not because she felt reassured, but because the relationship mattered. And over time, not suddenly, not dramatically, something began to shift. Her circumstances did not immediately change. Her questions were not fully resolved. But she noticed something subtle. She had not collapsed under the weight she feared would crush her. She was still getting up each morning, still able to carry responsibility, still able to love the people around her. The strength she needed kept appearing, not in the form of clear direction, but in quiet endurance. She realized that while God had not been speaking in the way she expected, He had been sustaining her. The silence had not meant withdrawal. It had meant provision without spectacle. She had been looking for words. God had been giving stability. She had been waiting for answers. God had been strengthening her roots. There was no moment when heaven suddenly opened, no dramatic breakthrough to point to. Only a gradual awareness that she had been carried through days she once feared she could not survive. The silence had not been empty, it had been steady. And recognizing that did not erase every ache, but it changed the meaning of the quiet. It prepared her for something deeper, not resolution, but understanding. And that is where we begin to bring all of this together. When you begin to look at silence differently, something important starts to settle. Trust does not always grow through constant reassurance. In the early stages of faith, frequent confirmation can feel necessary. Clear answers, tangible signs, emotional reassurance. Those things help build confidence. But as faith deepens, something shifts. Trust becomes less dependent on noise. It becomes less about what you hear and more about who you know. A relationship that requires constant verbal proof struggles to mature. But a relationship grounded in character, in history, in consistency, in quiet faithfulness, grows steadier over time. God's silence does not erase his history with you. It does not undo past faithfulness. It does not cancel previous moments of guidance, provision, or presence. Silence does not rewrite the story of who he has been. And this is where trust begins to change shape. Instead of asking, "Why isn't God speaking right now?" you begin asking, "Who has God consistently shown himself to be?" Trust anchored in character does not collapse in quiet. It does not panic when reassurance is delayed. It remembers. Silence can actually strengthen relational depth. When signs are constant, attention stays focused on the signs. But when signs fade, attention shifts to the relationship itself. You begin to remain with God not because he is answering quickly, but because he is God. Faith that does not require noise becomes resilient. It does not depend on emotional intensity. It does not fluctuate with every wave of uncertainty. It learns to remain steady even when confirmation is absent. This does not mean you stop longing for clarity. It does not mean questions disappear. It simply means your stability no longer depends on constant response. God is steady and quiet. He is not louder in crisis and softer in peace. He does not become more attentive when you are desperate and less attentive when you are calm. His presence is not volume-based. When you let go of the demand for visible signs, you begin to notice something else. The quiet ways he sustains you, the strength to endure, the wisdom to pause, the grace to keep going another day. These may not feel dramatic, but they are not small. Learning to trust God in the silence is not about pretending the quiet does not ache. It is about choosing to remain, even when answers are not immediate. It is about saying, "I will not measure your nearness by how loudly I hear you." It is about allowing silence to refine your trust rather than fracture it. Over time, this kind of faith grows less reactive and more rooted. It does not require constant confirmation. It does not collapse without signs. It learns to remain. And as we come toward the end of this reflection, we won't promise sudden clarity. We'll move toward something gentler, toward a gentle reassurance. And perhaps that is enough for today. Not an answer, not a breakthrough, not even a sudden sense of clarity. Just enough reassurance to remain. If God feels quiet in this season, it does not mean he has stepped away. If you do not hear him the way you once did, it does not mean he has stopped holding you. Silence can feel empty, but it is not always empty. Sometimes it is simply spacious. Spacious enough for trust to stretch. Spacious enough for roots to deepen. Spacious enough for a faith that is no longer dependent on constant confirmation. You may still have questions tomorrow. You may still long for clearer direction. You may still wish the quiet would break. That longing does not weaken your faith. It reveals your relationship. And relationships are not sustained by noise. They are sustained by presence, by consistency, by history, by the quiet knowledge that love does not evaporate when words are absent. Today, you do not need to decode the silence. You do not need to interpret every quiet moment as a message. You can rest in the possibility that God is nearer than your perception allows, that his steadiness does not fluctuate with your ability to feel it, that the quiet may be forming something stronger than constant reassurance ever could. If this reflection helped steady your heart, even slightly, I'd like to invite you to stay connected, not out of obligation, not out of urgency, but because spaces like this are easier to return to when you choose to remain close to them. If you'd like to continue walking through seasons like this with us, quietly, honestly, without pressure, you can subscribe and be part of this growing community. There will be no noise here, no dramatic promises, just steady reflections for seasons that feel heavy or unclear. And as you move forward from here, may you carry this with you. Silence does not mean distance. Waiting does not mean rejection, and quiet does not erase love. You are not alone in the silence, and you are still being held.